In that moment, that's when I realized that I wanted to be a writer. Because the history that we have been handed is filled with blanks and also with untruths. And we live in incredibly exciting times. You are probably the most important generation to walk the face of the earth on this continent in a very, very long time. 80% of this continent is under the age of 30. 80%. Europe is getting older, the West is getting older. People are not having children in places like Amsterdam and Germany at the rate at which we are having children here on the continent. And you kind of see the influence that you have in the way that mainstream media is targeting you, in the way that corporate advertising is targeting you, in the way that brands are targeting you, in the way that global pop icons are also targeting you. It's a time where it's like a new scramble for Africa. It's a new scramble for Africa, and the scramble is really for your minds. Whoever controls your minds controls the future of the planet. And that future is a really interesting space. I mean, if you think about the fact that 1,000 years ago, there was no such thing as race, as blackness as we understand it. I mean, blackness, of course, to describe somebody's hue or shade, you are the color of the deep, deep, deep soil that feeds all of us, right? You are the color of the beautiful people from Sudan, Tarien, Subasutu. You are the color of the earth, right? Then 500 years ago, race becomes a tool that is invented purely for economics, right? And tied to that also politics, Then you get this concept of black, right? 130 years ago, the man after which this university was named said that the inhabitants of this continent could not rule themselves, that we were subjects by design, called us savages. And then 60 years ago, next year, on this very day, 249 people died at the hands of the police because they don't want to carry past laws in the country that they were born in. What will blackness be 100 years from now? Will it still even matter? I was at Design Indaba 2 weeks ago, and there was a man there named Neil Harbison, who was born colorblind. He's from Catalonia in Spain. He has an antenna surgically implanted into his head that allows him to hear color. He hears the vibrations of color, And he works with a woman who's got surgical implants in her feet, microchips implanted in her feet so that she can feel the vibrations of the earth. She can literally feel earthquakes in different parts of the world throughout the course of the day, Even the smallest of vibrations, she picks it up. And she does dances, but incorporates this into her performance art, right? Neil calls himself a trans-species activist. Companies like IBM and Apple, Apple is making a lot of money right now selling us phones and tablets and computers, but they're investing their money right now. Your children will, when they sit in these chairs, Apple will be making the bulk of its money off of medical science products, So they're doing research right now, inventing synthetic organs, synthetic livers, synthetic lungs. So, as you sit here, with the generation that has to grapple with what decolonization means, with what democracy means for us, with what nationalism means for us, what this new wave of feminism means for us, what this new wave of Pan-Africanism means for us. You will also be the generation that decides whether or not you want to be mortal. If synthetic organs can prolong human life, extended by hundreds and hundreds of years, what happens to humanity when people exist for 400 years, 500 years? What happens to our resources? What happens to our identities? What does identity even mean? You know, I mean, if people can live for 400 years, that means you can travel to other galaxies, that the body can withstand it. If people can incorporate technology into their bodies, what does that mean for the human species, let alone race? I'm excited by this. I'm excited by how so many shifts are happening at the same time in our world right now. I'm excited by how so many young Black people are answering ancestral callings. I think that too is a part of the process of decolonization. I'm excited by how you are able to claim space in these institutions in a way that my generation couldn't even imagine. I couldn't imagine walking into WITS and feeling like I had the right to change its name. I felt like we were sold the idea that we were a part of building something, that over time these institutions would change. We were sold the idea that this transition was going to happen slowly, surely, if we all kept at it, if we all worked at it. And I think underneath that, as a Black child sitting in a university much like this, I felt a sense of unworthiness. I felt like this place wasn't built for me, but I'm here, and I'm here to change my life and to change the life of my family, so I have to make it work. So if I'm looking at Oppenheimer or Cullinan or whatever name, I don't have the right to even ask that this name be changed, because this space is not mine. I am a guest in it, even though my mother is sacrificing everything for me to be here, you know? The fact that your generation is saying boldly that these institutions must Africanize is extraordinary, And you do it with a confidence and a sense of self-assuredness and a power and a pride that is unfathomable for so many of us. It terrifies us. But just because it terrifies us doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. And just because you should do it, it also doesn't mean that you mustn't get your degrees as well. Because we need those degrees too. Because your brains need that knowledge. Because this continent needs those skills. Because you are here to transform the lives of your families. Because you are here to transform the lives of your communities. Because the solutions to the continent's problems is alive somewhere inside of your spirits. Problems that we haven't even begun to diagnose. You are sitting with those solutions. So your lives matter. And if you doubt that, look at how much people are willing to invest just to target you, how much advertisers are willing to invest to target you, how much brands are willing to invest to target you. There is a hand at any given point in your pocket and in your brain trying to tell you who to be, how to think, how to act, what to spend, how to move in this world. That's how much power you have. There's never been a generation on planet Earth that could walk around with a gadget in their pockets, that could say in 280 characters a message that could travel the world before you even left the room. That's how much power you have. If you decided tomorrow that you wanted different leaders, we would have different leaders. If you decided tomorrow that you wanted different institutions, we would have different institutions. If you decided tomorrow that you wanted to change the status quo of sexuality, relationships, how we define what love is, how we define what respect and consent are, you could do that tomorrow. That's the power that you have. And that's the power that they'll try to deny you. That's the power that they will try to minimize. That's the power that they'll try to erase. I hope that as you grow in your understanding of yourselves, I think this period of time is such a beautiful window When I was at university, I studied law and international relations. This was not supposed to be my life, you know. And somewhere along the way, I discovered the underground art scene in Johannesburg and fell in love with poetry. I'd been a writer for as long as I could remember, keeping a journal, keeping those A4 notebooks underneath my bed with very bad poems stuffed under the mattress. And when I went to poetry clubs for the first time and saw people reciting what they said were poems, it didn't look like the poetry that I was being taught at school. It didn't look like the poetry that I was being tested on. But it spoke to my soul and to my experience in a way that nothing had before. And I felt a sense of purpose. I felt a spark inside me that I'd never felt before in my life. And I knew that this is what passion had to be. I'd never experienced it, but I knew this is what it is. It's not every day that somebody gets to feel something like this. And once you get it, don't throw it away. There was a voice inside of me that told me that. And then began the long and arduous process of trying to figure out how to make a living as an artist. And having to say to my single mom that I don't want to be a lawyer, I want to be a poet. It's bad enough saying you want to be an artist.
Yes.
Like, it's bad enough if you want to be a musician. It's bad enough if you want to be on TV. Bad enough. A poet. What is that? What is that? You want to be broke, you want to be ashy, you want to starve, you want to do nothing. Thank you. What are you doing with your life, you know? And for years, I mean, I remember I couldn't even go. At some point, we were not speaking. I would get calls from my grandmother, God rest her soul, telling me that I'm driving my mother crazy. What do I think I'm doing? I had to figure out how I was going to make it work. I realized that I have an ability with language and I have an ability to connect with people. And if I can take those two things and remix them, how many different things can I do? How many different skills can I find? How many different opportunities can I jump into if they manifest themselves, you know? I didn't study what I do, but I've been doing it for 20 years now. And I see myself every day as a student of what I do. The jobs, the highest paying jobs on the planet right now, more than half of them didn't exist 10, 15 years ago. That's how fast technology is changing our world. Your generation will change careers, not just jobs, like careers, a minimum of 5 times in your lifetime. Adaptability, flexibility, multidimensionality, living in different worlds, acquiring different skills as you go, reinventing yourself. It's part of the language that you already understand. It's in you. It's built in you. And it's part of the language that you are going to teach the world. And the world is terrified of that because we've been told, you go to school, you get a degree, you get a job, you stay there, you get a husband, you get a baby, you die. And that's not the formula anymore. It doesn't work. That world is killing us. And it's not real. The bulk of people your age in this country who don't have the privilege and the pressure that comes with sitting in these chairs that you are sitting in. You know what our communities look like. They are unemployed, they are frustrated, they are addicted, they are brilliant. They've got as many ideas and as much passion as you have, but they don't have access and they don't have opportunities and they don't have resources and they don't have platforms to be able to express themselves. So what happens? And who's going to come up with solutions? Who's going to come up with those opportunities? Who's going to come up with the vision to be able to integrate a society that has been deliberately made into this dysfunction that we are reeling inside of and from in South Africa. Unfortunately, that responsibility, it sits with you. I performed at the opening of Parliament 10 years ago, and I remember sitting there, and it was a big debate for myself because it was right at the beginning of the Jacob Zuma administration, and I was not a Zuma fan. I've never been a Zuma fan. The power of words. In the third season of Latitude, we did an episode about the Jacob Zuma rape trial, which was one of the best things that I ever did. But it made my life in television a complete hell afterwards. I mean, imagine like doing a show about a man who is going to be president in 2 years on the national broadcaster and basically saying he's a rapist. At the age of 27. That was, wow, that was a lot. So 2 years later, he was president. And I was asked to perform at the opening of Parliament, and I grappled with it for a long time. And then I asked my mentor, the late the poet laureate who passed away last year. I asked him what I should do, and he said, you know, Parliament is bigger than him. That's your mom watching, that's your grandmother watching, that's everybody who loves you watching, that's all the people who need to be inspired watching. So I went and I did it, and thankfully, because of the protocol, he only comes in when he does his speech, you know. So I actually was performing for an audience filled with every dignitary that you can imagine. I mean, from Helen Zilla to Chico, to Zuma's wives, to everybody there, Makumalo, who I love. I genuinely love Makumalo, but I can't stand her husband. It's unfortunate, you know. And I looked out at the sea of people who are carrying more traumas than we would ever understand inside their bodies, and realize that the solutions that this country needs is not going to come from these individuals. At best, we can thank them and endure them, but at some point we must remove them. Even in our minds, we must remove them and imagine a reality beyond them. And the beauty of being you is that you live inside of that reality. You're not imprisoned by loyalties that other people are imprisoned by. You're not imprisoned by an allegiance to memories, you know, that you didn't create. You are part and parcel of these legacies that we've inherited, you know? And in many ways, you have a better understanding of these legacies because you're living the complexity of them, you know? But you don't owe it to anybody to tolerate what, under normal circumstances, in a free society should be intolerable. And people will tell you that you are crazy because you care about queer people, because you care about black people, because you're defining new ways of understanding gender, because you're defining new ways of understanding sexuality and sexual orientation. And also these things are actually not new. I mean, Native Americans, I read on the People's Republic of Facebook that there was a Native American nation that had 16 different genders. Yeah, 16 different genders, you know? So like a male, female, a female, male, I mean, no, right, what we would define now as non-binary, you know? Within that, there's so many different expressions, you know? We're living in a society that is toxic because it was by design. Not because we hatched out of eggs like this. Not because we were born out of our mother's wombs like this. Not because, you know, this is the grand design that God had in mind for us is to be messed up. No, it was deliberate. Misogyny, violence, capitalism went hand in hand. Same WhatsApp group with apartheid, colonialism, slavery, homophobia. It's all in the same matrix. And you guys are doing the work of untangling all of that and giving language to what has happened to us and giving language to the emotional, psychological, and spiritual trauma, you know? A language that our parents and our grandparents and great-grandparents could not even access, because if they had to really describe what they were living felt like, you wouldn't be here, they would be dead. There was no space to be sensitive during apartheid. There was no space for naming emotions or being depressed or being anxious. I mean, everybody was depressed. Everybody was reeling from anxiety. But there was no place for being able to, for saying that, oh, this is a problem, or you're wounded, you know? You had to just get on with it and suppress your emotions and stick your feelings in your feet and then go about your life and feed your kids and pay the bills and endure. The fact that you guys are giving name to generations and generations and generations of pain, that's the real healing work of freedom. That is real liberation. Naming your mental illness, naming the traumas of your families, naming your abuse, getting therapy, getting counseling, deciding that you need help, deciding that you want to break cycles, telling the truth to yourself about what has happened, about what's going on in your family, telling the truth about who you are to yourself. That's the work of freedom. And it's hard work. And it's never-ending work. Living in your integrity means that you are always going to be a problem to most people. That's the truth. Isn't that your experience, right? You tell the truth and you get into trouble. But you don't tell the truth and then you die slowly. So which is... I would rather have a very small circle of people who understand me and support me and move in a world that could potentially be hostile, you know, and a lot of the time is, and be able to sleep at night because I'm telling the truth to myself and to the world, then die slowly pretending that everything is okay and pretending to be somebody that I'm not. I think you are extraordinary because many of you are waking up, you know? I mean, I know there's like hashtag woke, you know, which is, it's also problematic. But there's a beauty to it. There's a beauty to it. Because what's the other side of being woke? Being asleep. And how many people have been asleep for how long? How many people have been sheep for how long? Being fed by corporates and being fed by governments and being told who to be by everybody else, by cultures, by traditions, by societies, by institutions that they didn't create or invent, but that are shoving you into boxes. Not to say that cultures and traditions are all bad. I love my culture, I love my traditions, but I also insert myself within those stories. And I critique it where necessary as well. And I take on what is true to me, what resonates with me, what feels like it's in line with my integrity. And what's not in line with my integrity, I make it very clear that it's not in line with my integrity. And let the chips fall where they may. I think it's also important that if you are going to embrace a life of trying to live in your integrity, that you have to create solidarity with people who are also trying to do the same. And that means looking out for people who are deliberately being pushed out of conversations. So if somebody is at the center, you know, of the discourse of the conversation, who's on the margins? Who's not in the room? Who's actively being silenced? Who's being erased, you know? And we can do that, I mean, in very big ways. You're gonna go off and do big, wonderful things because you are the best and the brightest that the continent has to offer. So when you sit in these institutions of power, this is the work that you'll have to do. But even now, on social media, who's being ostracized? Who's being silenced? In our families, who's being erased? Who's being silenced? In our churches, who's being told that you don't matter, that you are wrong, that you shouldn't exist? If we are living in our integrity, and if we're doing the difficult work of being truth tellers and of standing for justice, for being awake, right? Then we've got to be awake to the people who are being pushed out. Because all of us know what it is to be pushed out. All of us know what it is to be silenced. All of us know what it is to be marginalized. And we know that that is not justice. The people who are on the margins are the ones who are taking the hardest hits. And usually those are the people who are doing the innovative work. Those are the people who are pushing the boundaries of what justice really is and what it means. So, I know that there's many different careers in this room. I know that there are all kinds of future specialists and professionals. I know that you're sitting here, you're gonna do jobs that we haven't even seen yet. But I hope that when you sit in those positions that you continue to care about the things that we are going to speak about tonight. Because it's easy for people to dangle money and power in your face and to make you feel like you matter because of a price tag that is now attached to your name, you know? And when you haven't had, that price tag feels like it's something so big, you know? But at the same time also, if you haven't had, compromising your integrity really shouldn't have to be a big deal because, you know, how can, if I haven't had 100 million, why would I sell out for 100 million? I'm alive, I'm here today, I'm living, I'm breathing, I've got clothes on my back, my children are fed, you know? So why do I need to compromise my truth for something that I've never even known? If that's the price tag for it, I don't need it. I don't need it. The deepest wound of poverty and what has been done to us is where it sits in the spirit. That's how you get people who end up, you know, making millions upon millions upon millions and still stealing because it doesn't feel like it's enough. You know, because deep, deep, deep inside that hole, inside yourself, the you that knew the trauma of poverty is still bleeding. So the work of naming your wounds, the work of feeling, the work of naming your emotions, the difficult work that is being done in intimate relationships, it's absolutely vital. The work of defining and redefining what consent is, you know, which is a deep, deep wound even in this institution with the reference list. And those young women who cannot come back to school because they decided that they wanted to protect their own bodies and name what happened to them. That is ongoing work. And that is happening in every institution, in every corner of this country. Corporate, education, government, in my industry, it's the worst. When Me Too happens in South Africa, yo, guys, we haven't even started. We haven't even started. And I mean, it means it means redefining a new masculinity as well. So if you are a man and you care about black people, you care about Africa, you care about justice insofar as the continent is concerned, but you don't care about justice for women, then your understanding of justice is actually quite shallow. It doesn't go to the bone. Consent is something that we need to be debating every day. Our definitions of consent need to be evolving every single day. Our understanding of what defines healthy relationships needs to be evolving every single day. What does a healthy relationship look like? What does healthy sex look like? What does a supportive, honest, loving, loyal, inspiring relationship look like? A friendship, from a friendship to a family relationship to a romantic relationship. We have these shows that idealize marriage and, OPW, and which is fantastic, I mean, hey, I love the drama of weddings, I love the drama of funerals, I love it, I love the story, I love the decor, I love the cake, I love it. But we're not talking about what constitutes decent marriages. And then we're living in societies in a society where children don't have fathers. But we're celebrating weddings every week. How does that work? And there's a line between these, what we get fixated on as a society. There's a line between our fixation with these weddings, our fixation with these papel shows. We love the euphoria, and we love the conflict and the drama, right? But the in between, the day-to-day work of building. The power of words. Words like begezela. Yes. Words like lenyalo ke sempeho. Words like monna ke selepe, wa ahisana.
What are your words?
I don't even know what that means.
Are powerful. They shape our consciousness around what relationships are, around how we set boundaries, around what we are willing to settle for, what we are willing to demand, what we are willing to define and accept as love. And these are messages that stay with you. It's like a coding. It's programmed inside of you, deep in the marrow of your bones, in your DNA, is this message. And unless you're conscious of it, you'll just keep living out the same patterns that you inherited. Without even realizing it. Unless you deliberately do the work of undoing it. You just fall into it's like a groove in a record. Do you even know records? Share. It's like a well-worn path on the road, You walk it because it's there, because other people have walked it, So I'm deeply inspired by you. You make me brave. For all the things that people say about millennials being entitled, nah, I don't buy it. I think that you guys are amazing because you are demanding more, you are demanding better, you are demanding healthy spaces, you are demanding spaces that reflect you, you are demanding that this society evolves to be able to accommodate you in ways that are supportive, in ways that allow you to give full expression to who you are. And that is transformative work. That is really radical work. And I I am eager to see what you are going to do with this world. Because, hey, we've made a mess of it. And just seeing what you've been able to do, you know, with the influence that you have on social media, the influence that you have on culture, just what you've been able to do in a very brief space of time as a generation has been extraordinary. So, with those words, can I leave you kama fukonyani?
Yes.
We call on memories buried deep inside skeletons of the first people to walk the skin of the earth, who nursed and nested in the cradle and fed and spread civilizations across the planet like seeds. Tell us of air that flows through the heart of the land to all life and creation. Tell us of breath, the first song. Tell us of words like constellations mapping our contributions to humanity. Tell us of infinity, how the universe lives in us. Tell us which songs bear our names, so we no longer have to fear the night. Tell us of earth, of roots that course through the body of the land like veins through flesh. Tell us of the force that squeezed the red sand like dough to form mountains. Tell us how to make communities strong like gemstones forged under extreme pressure. We call on the desert to remember when she was the bottom of the sea. Help us understand how to be fluid like water, how to be supple without losing our identities. We call on volcanoes to inject us with flames of imagination. Once we carried tongues burping fire, we melted metals with our minds. Tell us what we have forgotten. We are not afraid of bombs. Tell us what we have lost. We are not afraid of remembering. Tell us what has been erased. We are not afraid of time. Tell us who we once were. We are not afraid of ourselves.